Now, to discuss more the question of those hostages, I'm joined by Shirli Sitbon. Shirli, a hostage situation is always complicated to negotiate, but in this situation, it's even more complicated. Can you tell us a little bit what possible negotiators or mediators will have to deal with?
Yes, so there's not even just the issue of hostages, because there's so many issues and sticking points to clear out. First of all, yes, you said the hostages, but there's so many things regarding the hostages. Of course, we can imagine a prisoner swap hostages against people held in Israel. But it's not just that. There's also the safety of the hostages, because Hamas says, well, it could kill, it's threatening to kill some of the hostages if the Israeli bombing in the Gaza Strip continues. So this is getting more and more complex. Then the negotiators, well, their goal is not just the hostages. They want to stop the fighting. They want to stop this massive operation led by Israel in the Gaza Strip as a response to what Hamas did in Israel. So they have to try and do everything to get to lower the flame. So what do they have for that? Well, there's still rockets going into Israel, also the bombing against the Gaza Strip. So they have to find a way. And the problem is that the Israelis and Hamas both say, well, we're not ready necessarily to negotiate. You would think that they would both want to, but of course, Israel has just had this huge setback. So some experts say, well, the Israeli government does not want to swap now. And the Egyptians have said that too. They don't want to negotiate right away a swap. They want, first of all, to show they're strong. And this continues. And meanwhile, Hamas managed to give this actually very successful operation, give this setback, this blow to the Israelis. It surprised them, and it wants to, this to pay off in a way. It wants this to carry out. And Ismail Haniyeh, the one of the leaders of Hamas, he said, well, we're not going to negotiate any kind of swap now. We want the war to be over before we start negotiating. So it's extremely, extremely complicated. Meanwhile, the negotiators, the mediators, will also have to think about Hezbollah, also think about the West Bank, how to stop the spread and the worsening of the situation. So it's extremely complex.
We've talked about these possible mediators. One of them is Qatar. They've already confirmed that they've been holding some talks to try to figure out a possible prisoner swap, even if that's further down the road. Can you tell us why Qatar could be such a player in this mediation?
Yes, because Qatar is financing Hamas in a way, because it pays some of the public workers there. It has given money to Hamas, to the Gaza Strip. It has a good relation with Hamas. But at the same time, for several decades now, it has had contacts with Israel. Its leaders have met Israeli ministers. So there are contacts between the two. So Qatar is respected by both, and Hamas wants to keep its good relations with Qatar. So it has influence on both sides. At the same time, there's also a competition, because every country wants to be the mediator that succeeds this deal, because it will give them greater leverage. But as I've said, it's very complicated. And this morning on Israeli television, there was this mother of two children who were taken hostage, and her husband as well was taken hostage. And she was calling on television, crying, saying, negotiate, get the hostages out. And TV presenters were saying, when you're crying this way, you're weakening the position of Israel, the bargaining chips, although this is terrible to say, and you're obviously, we understand that you're crying, but now it's time to negotiate. So you see how all these levels, there are civilian lives at stake on both sides, of course. At the same time, the politicians, the political leaders are thinking strategically, diplomatically. They're thinking of what will happen next. So it's extremely complicated to mediate, because everyone has to settle several equations, and they're not necessarily thinking about the basic things, which is stopping the violence.
You mentioned that the mediators want to be the first one, the one to succeed. We've talked about Qatar. Who else are we talking about? Who else could be a mediator?
Well, the Egyptians have many times been mediators successfully because they have peace with Israel. They're very respected by the Israelis. At the same time, they're respected by Hamas because they also have this border with Gaza. So Hamas needs to have good relations with the Egyptians. And the Egyptians as well, like the Qataris, they want to mediate something because they also want to be the powerful regional player, which they are, but want to confirm this, showing that they can obtain this, they can bring some calming down the situation, bring some restraint. That would be a great success. And also there's Turkey, of course, with Recep Tayyip Erdogan, which has relations, and since he's in power, Turkey has long had good relations with Israel, but since he's in power, well, Turkey's relations with Hamas have improved, so he has also a key role to play. They all have to get in there and find some kind of solution. Anyway, the negotiators are working on this, but it's extremely complex.
Thank you very much, Shirli Sitbon, for helping us navigate this complicated story.